I think we are good to go. I'm just going to go with this anyway. Hello, Richard. So introducing you, you're an experimental psychologist, and in fact, the Scientific American has uh, described you as one of the most interesting and innovative experimental psychologists in the world today. I've personally heard you on the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, and you are one of their funniest guests they have ever had. And yeah, you're an extremely popular speaker. You are part of the Magic Inner Circle. You've got popular YouTube videos on magic. And I understand you've got a new book out with some beautiful photos in it from the museum in Las Vegas about magic. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a look at that book. But I'm going to hand over to you now, and during this talk, you're going to be joined by our other Richard Saunders, to talk with you. So thanks, Richard. Away you go.
Thank you very much. So fingers crossed, people can hear me and see me. And greetings from Edinburgh in Scotland. I think you're quite a few hours ahead of us. So if you don't find this interesting or entertaining, give it a few hours, and hopefully then the true impact will be known. Fingers crossed, if the technology works, I'm going to be speaking and do some slide sharing for about 10 minutes or so, and then Richard and I are going to have a chat. So hopefully, if I press this button here, I'm going to be able to slide. Oh my goodness, I think I can share my slides. So here we go. All being well, you should be seeing my name and then me in the corner, hopefully. So we're going to be talking about magic, talking about illusions. What I've done is put together 10 minutes of the various projects that I've been up to during lockdown, and we're just going to canter through them, and we'll see what we end up with. So some of you know, I rather like illusions. My background is in magic and in psychology, particularly psychology of illusion. And so let's talk about some of them. Basically, we know as Okay. What's happening?
So to the stream, Richard is hearing the voice from the ether, who is our technician, but that doesn't actually go out to the stream. So it all seems very confusing, but a little technical difficulty, and we are sorting that out.
Okay. So can folks see my slides or not at the moment? Okay. All right. In which case, that's okay. Okay. Just let me know when they can. Can they see me? Okay. Well, let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. There you go. And while we're getting that fixed, I'll show you the very first magic trick. I'll sit up now. I wasn't intending to do this. The very first magic trick I ever learned. So involved tucking this red handkerchief. Very odd to do this on Zoom. Often they do magic live. You tuck it into your hand like that, give a little blow, and fingers crossed, completely disappears. So there we are, the very first magic trick I ever learned in my life, and still performing it all these years on. How are we doing on that slide sharing? Are we anywhere close? Still working? Okay, that's very good. It's quite exciting.
Do another magic trick, Richard.
Do another magic trick. I might do a magic trick, and then I'll explain how it's done as well. Let me find an elastic band here. Here we are. One you can show the kids. So let me zoom up a little bit. Angles are a bit weird on this, but you place the elastic band over the first two fingers here. And what you're going to do is just blow on your hand and make it jump to the other two fingers. Well, hey, look at that. Let me show you that again. There it is, two fingers, and just going to blow like that, and immediately jumps to the other two. Not only that, if we put an elastic band across the top, oh my goodness, it's a bit hard to do this on Zoom. There we go. Like that, trapping the other elastic band, you can still make it jump back again. How amazing. How amazing is that? Not particularly amazing, some of you are thinking. Would you like to know the secret bit? I'll teach this while we're trying to get the slides sorted out. It's a great little trick. First trick you teach kids. What you're doing, this is how it looks from your side, as it were. That's how it looks from my side. And as you're bringing those fingers in, you're just pulling this elastic band over here, putting all those fingers into it, which means when you open it, it'll jump across to the other two fingers. There we go. And what's incredible about that is that when you put another band kind of trapping it like that, it doesn't make any difference to the mechanics, because what the band is doing is essentially that. So it's a very kind of lateral effect, but it's very nice. And probably takes, a little bit of practice just to kind of get this movement right. The other way you can do it is like that and make it jump up to the top fingers. But it's all the same movement. And there we go. Two illusions. How are we doing? Okay, no, I'm happy. If folks can see the football player one, I'm happy.
Apparently,
can they see that?
Ruined the magic for Susan Gerbic.
Hello, Susan. So sorry. So sorry. I know a lot of skeptics think this stuff is genuine, but there's a method to it. How are we doing? Can folks see the football player with the long arm? If not, Richard and I can just chat. Oh, okay. Is there any way of checking that they can see it before because otherwise it's going to sound surreal.
Hello, this is the voice
it is
of
going
God.
out to the stream. So yeah, no, it's all good.
Oh, good. Excellent. There we go. So hopefully you're seeing a football player with a long arm, and this is basically us putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5. There's another one. It's a levitating person on the beach. And it's just the shadow. What's nice is actually here, we can take away that shadow. It's just amazing how you then just see exactly what it is. And we bring it back again. And if you look up at the rug, and then suddenly it appears to levitate again. So it's very, very easy to fool the human mind as a cat looking through the bag there. So I love this stuff. During lockdown, I created a few. This is a sort of based on an old Victorian idea, but this is my version of it. And so if somebody presented this to you, the question is, how would you compare the height of the hat to the width of the brim? Most people would say the hat is taller than it is wide. That isn't the case. They're identical, which is kind of hard to believe. So to help you, here's the little red line. We can move it vertically, move it up. And you can see those two distances absolutely identical. There's another one. I created this when I'm walking out and about in Edinburgh. Just took a picture of a van, and then all I've done is photoshopped it, as it were, twice. And because of the hill on the street, you think that again, that's, oh my goodness, there's participants coming up there. What's happening there? Let me try and get rid of this. There we are. Then you think the van's getting bigger. And again, we can see it's not. Here's a red line. You can move it up to here. You see it's the same. Move it up to here and see it's the same. So very good at tripping ourselves up. This is a new illusion. It came actually just before lockdown. It's a little bit procedural, but it is great. It's about the power of blinking, which is a kind of visual reset when we do that. So what you need to do, hopefully you're seeing one block on top of 2 other blocks. And you need to look where the X is. I'll take the X away in a minute, but you keep your eyes there. I'm going to rotate the whole thing round. So it'll look like 2 blocks on top of 1. And then I'm going to ask you to blink. So keep looking where the X is. Keep looking where the X was. Follow it round. You'll see 2 blocks on top of 1, and now blink. And all being well, it will reset back into 1 block on top of 2. And that's because during the blink, you're doing a visual reset into the dominant position for seeing this illusion. So that was new to me. I'd never seen that particular illusion before. Prof Richard and I'll talk about, I got a bit obsessed with pop-up stuff early on in lockdown. I was spending quite a lot of time at home, so I thought I'd learn how to do pop-up cards and so on. I actually entered a competition, perhaps we'll talk about that later. But then I realized you could actually perform magic with pop-up stuff. So I invented this little pop-up magic trick here. Fingers crossed it'll just play, and there's no sound, or there's no sound you need to worry about. So there we go. This is a little pop-up magic trick that annoyed a lot of magicians. That's the second one going in. There we are. There we go. So that was one that I created. And the other one, oh my goodness, there we are, was this one. And I'll just afterwards, I will reveal a little bit about how this was done because it looks very simple. This is the little box trick that I came up with. Again, a new sort of method essentially in magic. So let me just play it in. So we move the box over there, open it up, show hands empty, says no mirrors, and hopefully click fingers. And my goodness, there's one of those balls. It's reappeared again. And it's solid. Who knew? And lo and behold, we actually repeat that as well. Oh, and there's another one. Nightmare to film. Nightmare to film. So that was about take number 50 on that. And we can talk a little bit about the psychology behind it. But I'll give you a little clue as to what was going on there. That was the size of the setup that we had. And I can talk more about that later. So we did that, sort of creating stuff in the evenings and so on. And early on in lockdown, there was suddenly this notion in the UK about social distancing and in place, actually. And lots of parents and teachers were saying it was kind of hard to get that message across to kids in a way that wasn't too terrifying for them. And so I teamed up with a friend of mine, Martin Jacob, and we created an online computer game. And we did it really quickly. It was a very agile response to COVID, which basically was a fun way. You went through the game. If you kept away from people, then you get points. You get even more points if you're a good citizen by collecting masks and delivering at health centres and so on. It went viral, which was lovely to see. So it got reported all over the world. And we had hundreds of thousands of people playing it. It was free to play. It was online. You could play it anywhere. It's called Can You Save the World? And so it was a kind of nice way of getting a bit of skeptical thinking and more to the point, people behaving in a pro-social way very early on. What else do we have here? One of my passions is getting skepticism out, particularly to younger minds. I think it's a real challenge at the moment. And so I teamed up with two comic book creators, Jordan and Rick, and we've created a magazine called Hocus Pocus. It's kind of a comic which leads people through skepticism, leads them through the history of magic, leads them through stories that are allegedly paranormal, and they find out they're not. And it's all done in this kind of lovely, very accessible form. And we're on issue 4 now. We're working on issue 5. That's been very successful. It's called Hocus Pocus Comic. It's all free to download. The physical issues are for sale, but anyone can go onto the Hocus Pocus Comic site and download the PDF and read those for free. So those are out there. And in terms of Australia, at the Melbourne Magic Festival, not too long ago, we staged with Lawrence Liang, some of you will know, made a wonderful skeptical TV series about paranormal. We staged the Davenport Seance. It's a wonderful logo that Lawrence came up with for it. And very successful series of shows there. If you don't know the Davenport brothers, they're the ones on the two extremes of this photograph. And they are central to skepticism, spiritualism, and magic, and actually escapology as well. The idea was they were tied up in this cabinet, and then they'd make the spirits to make their presence known by musical instruments flying out the cabinet and so on. And they were magicians. And the show is about that, encourages a kind of skeptical attitude. What's interesting is at the beginning of it, Lawrence talks about his love of these kind of old, creepy, vintage comics, which I love as well, kind of Tales from the Crypt type thing. And then during the show, we find out about Davenport Brothers. And then at the end, the audience find out the whole show has been predicted in the comic, and they actually appear in the comic book themselves. So it's quite a novel way of getting skepticism out there to new audiences and particularly younger audiences. And then just heard the introduction. I've been working with David Copperfield and David Britland and Homer Lewag, and we have produced this wonderful book. I think it looks wonderful, on the history of magic, based on David Copperfield's Secret Museum in Vegas. And it was a kind of huge labor of love. The museum is absolutely superb. And we take readers through the museum with these big sort of double-page spreads. It's a very glossy kind of book. And again, there's a lot of skepticism sort of threaded through that. So this is the Houdini exhibit you're looking at. I think my favorite story of Houdini, which is in the book, is that he comes to Glasgow in Scotland. And the idea was he could escape from any jail. He'd be locked into a jail cell and escape. So he's locked up placed into a jail cell in Glasgow, and he can't pick the lock. And he's there for hours and he can't pick the lock. And he's starting to panic and eventually leans, exhausted, against the cell door, and it swings open. And so the reason he can't pick the lock is that it was never locked in the first place. And so the master magician had trapped himself in there just with his own assumptions, which is kind of how magic works normally, but magicians aren't the ones making the assumptions. So again, it's sort of showing how we can trip ourselves up. So that book is out there now. We're very proud of that. And just finishing up on this, one of the other things, if you're doing lots of Zoom calls and so on, might get a little bit tired and you need to look good on screen, here's my top tip, the Sleep Safe tape. It's basically sticky eyeballs. And so that when you're asleep like that or feeling a bit tired, you stick them onto your eyelids and you look like you're perfectly awake. Just kidding. Don't do it. So there we go. Let me stop my slide there. So I just thought I'd give you a sort of feeling of some of the projects I've been involved in. And I think Richard and I are going to have a chat, all being well.
Hello. I'll just
there we are.
Wait for the big thumbs up that I've come in to join you, Richard Wiseman. What a pleasure, what an honor it is for you to talk to me, for me to talk to you. That's a gag I did when we spoke in the UK some years ago.
I remember.
Richard, I hardly know where to begin. But this concept you bring up with magic, of course, and it's very dear to my heart too, being an amateur magician. The actor Alan Alda was promoting, he came to Australia and promoted that science and art were long lost lovers and they have much in common. And I dare say that magic and skepticism have this similar romance over the years. And it really is because of people like our dear and much missed friend, James the Amazing Randi, using his magical knowledge that really began the skeptical adventure for a lot of us.
Absolutely. And that goes back a long way. I mean, Houdini was heavily involved in skepticism. The last third of his stage show was kind of debunking mediums and so on. And why is that? I think there's a couple of things. I mean, in fact, if you go back to Discovery of Witchcraft, which is the first English language book on magic, Reginald Scott, he wrote this book arguing that witches were being persecuted, and then because these people weren't actually witches, and it was just persecuting sometimes people with mental health issues and poor and so on. And in that book is a whole section on magic, and he's not arguing that witches are using magic. He's saying that the magicians can fool us, and if we can be wrong here, then we can be wrong over here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how skeptics like to use magic. It is such a compelling illustration, like optical illusions, of how we can be very confident and very wrong.
Absolutely.
It's a fun version of that.
I was just about to say, you were mentioning your videos from before, Quirkology. Folks, if you haven't seen Richard Wiseman's Quirkology videos, and the book, of course, or the bets you can lose, what a wonderfully entertaining series of videos they are. They started, I think you started, well, one of your very early videos was the card changing to teach people that they don't really notice the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, that was color changing card trick. It was our first one in. YouTube hadn't been going very long. And I sort of had this idea in my head and eventually got everyone together in the lab and we filmed it. We put it out and it became this viral sensation. And then we started the channel and there's lots of other stuff on there. And all of it, or at least most of it, we reveal the method. And the problem with most magic is the method is ugly and people don't really want to see it. So we created magic where the method is far more interesting than the effect. And so it celebrates magical thinking and celebrates skepticism. I mean, lots of people buy into the paranormal because the effect, being able to talk to your deceased friends and relatives, or, if you're feeling bad, ill, that you can instantly get better. The effect is so strong. People want to believe that stuff. And so I think saying, the method, the secret bit, the truth, can be equally entertaining and interesting is a very strong messaging.
It's a really important and interesting point you bring up, because I've been doing a show now for nearly 20 years for school children called The Mystery Investigators, with many friends along the way. And years ago, I wrote to you and said, begging, Richard, can I please use one of your videos in our production, in our show? And you said, absolutely, of course. It's the perceptions one, where you're in a room, there's a giant coffee cup or a teacup, which looks to be small, and the chair magically, and that gets an enormous reaction from the students. And I must say that has been viewed as part of our performance by thousands of students over the 20 years.
Well, it's nice. It was actually filmed in this very room that I'm sitting in now. It was filmed over there. It was filmed over there.
How about
the reason
that?
I love the video is that we did it in, I think, 2 takes. It normally takes hundreds of takes. We did it in 2. So we were out of the room very quickly. And it's about assumptions that the people make. And you know, what is phenomenal about the Quirkology channel and YouTube in general is the reach it has. So we've had, over 500 million views of those videos, which blows my mind, and when skeptics get it right, there is a tremendous audience, I think, for skepticism. People, and so that's what gives me hope. Saying that, it's also a platform filled with, terrible junk as well. But at least we can get our message out there in a very direct way.
Well, this whole concept about the fascination of how does it work? And that's something I've leveraged. I've tried to reach the school children's curiosity. Oh, here's the trick, oh, that's amazing. You can bend a spoon on, of course,
Very good.
You can bend a spoon. And but the real way to reach them is, it looks great, but I'll let you in on the secret. Oh, really? What's that? And I think that's a great inroad into their curiosity.
I think so. I mean, the problem if you perform magic is that the social contract is really weird. It's like, I know this secret thing and I'm not going to tell you, but you need to like me. And that's a really difficult thing to kind of pull off. And so magicians, the good ones, are actually pretty likable if they're going to pull that off, because you're telling somebody something and you're not letting on the secret. I think there is something quite beguiling about going, actually, you can join the club, you can come backstage, and also getting them to perform the stuff. I mean, some of my research has looked at the benefits of kids performing magic. It's good for concentration. You've got to practice this band thing. When you try, you've got to practice that for a while before you show people. You're going to make mistakes. I'm a big fan of mistakes because that's how you learn. You've then got to show it to your friends. There's all the social skills. And of course, there's the lateral thinking. Even something as simple as this, the band thing was invented about 1910, 1911. It's a very lateral puzzle. And so I think all those things, I think we magic's often just seen as entertainment, but I think it really matters. It's always been a really powerful tool for skepticism, particularly with attracting younger people.
Well, let me hasten to add, we don't actually reveal something like spoon bending, but we use the leverage there to say, now we're going to talk about, well, here's a great topic. And one that's close to your heart will say, we're going to look at firewalking, and we'll describe firewalking. And the analogy I use for Aussie kids here in Sydney especially is, because we can't set up a fire pit, obviously. The analogy is, have you ever been to a beach here in Sydney on a stinking hot day? And many of the kids have. And you cannot walk 4, 5, 6, more than 6 steps on a burning hot beach without it starting to burn your feet. And many kids instantly relate to that. Then I can work that into the physics of firewalking. But I've heard it 1,000 times. I could hear it 1,000 times more. Please briefly relay your wonderful experience about filming firewalkers.
That's yes. That clip always goes down well at Skeptics events. So yes, that was a bunch of firewalkers a long time ago now. It's on national television. A bunch of firewalkers that they said they were using the power of their mind to put an energetic force field around their body. And we thought we'd put that to the test, because they were only walking along beds of coals that were 10 or 15 feet long. And as you know, the physics of that is pretty safe. So we said, why don't we put this to the test by having a bed of coals that's like, sort of 20, 30 feet long. And so we did that live on television, and they walked across and all burnt their feet quite badly. And it was just this brilliant of example. I mean, it's sort of how your beliefs can actually be quite dangerous if you don't think rationally about this stuff. So yeah, that was a long time ago, the firewalk. But I think, you know, whether you expose these things, the secrets or not, I can see the argument for leaving that sense of mystery. The very first magic I saw was my grandfather, but I did an illusion. And he said to me, I was pestering him, you know, how's this thing done? And he said, the answer is in a book, and the book is in the library. And so he made me go down and read all these kind of library books about magic. And that's how I got into it, by kind of, you know, getting that. Because I think if you make it too easy to find out the secret, it's like it doesn't mean anything anymore, because it's just too easy to get hold of.
That's a very good point. Is this part of your thinking when you created the bets that you can win, the sort of the bar bets, the fun parlor trick bets? Because that's a whole series of videos and also a book, isn't it?
It is. And I don't know I think, I know sometimes I think about anything. I think I just do stuff that appeals to me. I have a very, very short attention span. And so I thought 10 bets that you can win, that feels like a hook. There's all these kind of physics stunts and so on. So the science gets under the radar with it. And I think it really took off. And then it became the book, and the book went all across the world. But I think it's that fun thing of, often when people hear science and maths, they don't want to know. These are subjects they didn't do very well in at school. It's just all negative kind of connotations. So coupling it with fun, coupling it with a bet they can win, I just think is kind of great. And that's what we did basically, and a lot of that lateral thinking.
And I must say, from a production point of view, from a purely fun point of view, the videos are very engaging. There's great little music behind them, and often in your videos, right at the end, if you stay, you see the bloopers, which are really, really funny.
Of which there are many. I mean, what's interesting about YouTube is that I think you can, it's like a good talk, you can smell authenticity. It's not like television where it's very glossy. And with YouTube, basically, I'm inviting people into my house and I'm showing you something that I'm passionate about. Yeah. And I think people can smell that, and they'll kind of go, well, I'm really into little boxes that produce ping pong balls, but, you know, Wiseman seems to be, so we'll give it a go. and I think, you know, if people have that passion on YouTube, social media, it kind of goes across to people and becomes quite contagious in a way that doesn't work on television. That's very kind of manufactured. So yeah, I just film these things and have fun with them.
I'm talking about letting people in on a secret, joining the club, saying, come here, I'll show you something. When I was in Edinburgh some years ago, I had the rare pleasure and honor of being a speaker at was it the Secret Society that you were organizing?
It would have, yes.
What was the idea behind that? I remember I turned up and there was a room full of people, and they said, here's Richard Saunders from Australia. What's his secret? He's going to show you some origami.
That's very good. No, you did. I think you did the origami behind the back.
I think I did, yes.
Fantastic, yeah. Secret Society was something I did with a colleague of mine, Pete Lamont. And we just wanted to create a society which kind of celebrated curiosity and kind of rational thinking. And so we put together, it's very popular, and lots of people came along to these events. And yeah, we just brought together stuff that we found really interesting, mainly some magic, sometimes juggling, sometimes origami. We always kept it pretty short. There's a lot of messing around with it. One of them we conjured up the devil. That was good. That was interesting, actually, because we did this whole thing about saying who's skeptical in the audience, and sort of whatever it was, 25%. You really skeptical? Yeah. You really into science? Yes, we are. And he said, right, we've got this sort of piece of paper. We want you to sell your soul to the devil. You just need to sign, and it means the devil gets your soul. And suddenly they weren't quite so skeptical. There's only about like half a dozen that came forward. And then we conjured up the devil, who looked a lot like an actor, it has to be said. And that was the ending of that secret society one. So we always tried to do kind of offbeat stuff.
Well, I mean, it's a wonderful example how you have in the past and continue to engage with people, which is so important when we come to science communication. Folks, I can see there are questions coming in. We'll get to those pretty soon. But the other thing I wanted to mention to you briefly, one of the happiest times I've had in producing my own show, the podcast, The Skeptic Zone, was in that same trip to Edinburgh. Oh, by the way, another guest at that same meeting of the Secret Society was somebody showing us how to mix cocktails. I thought that was pretty good. That was
that's right. And I think that was the person who hadn't realized he was going to be doing it in front of the audience. He thought he was just coming along to mix cocktails. And we said, no, this is a performing event. And so this guy who was actually quite shy suddenly had to step up to the mark and do this live cocktail performing. Yes, I remember it well. Yes. And we had the seance as well. So we had Susan and Mark doing the seance show. So yeah, with loads of different things.
Our dear friend Susan Gerbeck, of course, from who's viewing us right now. A big shout out to Susan. But I was about to say that on that same visit, after I got over my jet lag, you and I took a stroll along the river bank with no agenda, nothing particular in mind. I got my microphone out and we just had a chat. As we strolled along, we chatted about science and skepticism and what we were seeing along the way. And when I look back at the years I've been doing this sort of thing, I think, wow, that's a moment. That was just such an enjoyable and interesting time with somebody who was equally as passionate about communicating science and reason.
It was nice. I think the river helped.
The river did help.
I just think it was very relaxed and kind of fun, and we're just reflecting on things. And so it was very, very fond memories of your trip. Come back again very, very soon, because we miss you.
We'll see what COVID has to say about all that. I mean,
well, there is that. Yes. Other than that, I'm just ignoring that. Yes, it will. I'm fingers crossed it'll be behind us soon enough. But
of course, this is what we skeptics do all the time. We always say
absolutely.
Fingers crossed and
that's right.
Touch wood and all the rest of it. Okay, questions, folks. Thank you very much for bringing in some questions. Madeline asks, now let me just read this off the screen. When I've tried to unveil conspiracies to a relative by removing the magic of them, it didn't work. I don't know why. Do they have to be open to it for it to work, to view a new reality? I guess the question is, how do you get somebody out of the rabbit hole of conspiracies? I don't know if you've had much experience with that.
Well, I have. I mean, it's difficult. So I think here's the thing. I'm a social psychologist. And so we care quite a lot about people and groups. And so my question would be, why do people believe conspiracy theories? I don't believe it's because they're good at assessing evidence. Otherwise, they wouldn't be believing a conspiracy theory. So if you go in with evidence, I don't think you're going to get very far, because these probably are people that aren't particularly into evidence. My guess is that they're holding conspiracy theories because it makes them feel special, that it makes them feel unique, that they can say, I know something that you don't, and you're having the wool pulled over your eyes. And it gives them, probably most important of all, a community. It gives them a bunch of like-minded people where they're accepted and so on. And as a social psychologist, I'd be tempted to tackle it at that level. How can you make them feel smart? How can you make them feel that they belong in our community? Because otherwise, I think you're not going to have any chance really at all to change people's minds. I don't think we're going to have a lot of luck changing it with evidence. It's about being far more welcoming and understanding and empathic would be my guess.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, especially, and maybe you can give us a brief understanding. I mean, here in Australia, over the past 2 years, we've really seen the rise of the conspiracy theorists when it comes to COVID. from both sides. We've got the people who believe it was manufactured, the people believe it's out to kill the population. But conversely, we've got the people, and they're strangely lumped together, who believe it's a nonsense and it's no such thing, or it's just the flu. And then we've got the same grouped into them, the people who swear that the 5G is affecting the vaccinations, which have microchips and all. You must have been.
We've got it all here. And I have to say, I think the skeptics could have said, we've been telling you about this for years. We've been telling you people have got weird beliefs and you haven't been listening to us. And now those weird beliefs really matter. They're not about whether we landed on the moon. Suddenly they're affecting everyone. We told you. And I don't think science and journalism has been very well geared up to deal with it. I think, and now it really matters. So I think for me, it would be, again, that responsibility of chatting to people, but trying to get your head around why they believe what they believe and whether you can come in, because what you don't want to do is break up families and break up communities and break up friendships. Some friends of mine, it turns out, have some very, very strange ideas about COVID. And I don't want to lose those friendships over something like that.
Yeah.
So, it's got to be done carefully. It's a little bit like if you go into someone's house and they go, I've just got this new wallpaper up, and you hate it. You probably wouldn't go, God, it's terrible wallpaper. What are you thinking? There'd be ways round having that conversation that's polite and civil and accepting and maybe fun. I think that route for most people, not everyone, most people would be where I would go.
Oh, I don't know. I've met some people who are pretty forthright in there.
Yes. I bet you don't invite them a second time.
Now, let's look towards the future, Richard. Are you going to be producing more of those wonderful videos for YouTube?
Well, I showed you the two I produced during lockdown. I'm very proud of those because they're very sort of interesting magically. Probably not a lot more stuff on YouTube. I feel like I've sort of been there, done it, and also they're evergreen videos, so they're always getting views, which is nice. I've been doing writing during lockdown and rather enjoying that. So I have a book out next year about psychology and my thoughts about psychology in a sort of, I hope, an interesting way. And I've been doing a lot of work on magic within the magic community. That's the book with Copperfield and so on. So I think one thing that lockdown has done has made me reflect a little bit on whether I want to be on the road all the time, giving talks and so on. And I probably will be a little bit more reflective going forward and probably focus a little bit more on writing.
Right. And speaking of which, of course, you've written many books. You very graciously sent me one autograph to my nephew. It was with the Betts, and he was about 10 or 12 at the time. So you can imagine what a wonderful book that was for him. But I imagine, and we had a question sort of floating around before. I've just lost track of it, but the gist of it was I imagine that your books are pretty widely available if people go to Amazon or any place like that.
Yeah, I hope so. They should be. I'd be disappointed if they weren't. So yeah, it's been doing it for quite a long time now. I wrote Luck Factor in, I think it's 2000. 2000 it came out. So 20 years. That was the very first one. And that came about. I was going to do a book on skepticism, and no publisher wanted to touch it. And just by chance, in a meeting, they said, "What else are you working on?" And I sent this thing on luck, and that became the book. And then eventually I did the skeptical book, which is Paranormality, a few years later.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so there'll be some of that. And I think I've produced a book probably once every sort of year and a half, something like that. And they're all fun. They're all quite... So I've got pleasant memories of all of them. And the last one was about, how the psychology that took us to the moon. Because I'm very interested in this notion of the impossible and how, as humans, we have the ability to imagine something impossible and then make it happen. Very magic thinking. But in the real world, just even thinking that within such a short period of time, we could produce a vaccine and roll it out. I mean, you have to remember that a year and a half ago, people were going, of course we can't do that. It's taken 20 years, taken 30 years. We did it. It's phenomenal. And it's that gives me hope. And so it's that kind of thinking about the impossible I'm really quite intrigued by.
We have to wrap this up. So sadly, I think I could chat to you for the next 6 years, let alone the next 5 or so minutes we have left on the clock. Very briefly, before we wrap it up, I'm getting flashbacks to a very funny video with you where something fell on somebody's head. Was it a book you were publishing going into space or something like that?
Yes. You've got a very good memory. That we launched Shoot for the Moon book into space on a big balloon, a big balloon that goes up, and it goes to inner space. It doesn't go to outer space. It's got a camera attached to get these lovely views of the Earth. And so it's all great, and it came down and stuff. And then I thought I'd do this fun bit to camera where the joke was it's kind of come down behind me. And so I said to the person off camera, just sort of throw it up. It'll come down behind me as the funny ending to the video. And he threw up a hardback book, and it came down, hit me on the head very hard. And the amazing thing is, because we were sending something into space and back again, it was massively insured with huge insurance around in case the thing that actually went to space did actually come down on someone. The one thing we hadn't insured was idiot Wiseman standing there asking someone to throw a book up, which then did hit me on the head. Yes, very good memory. But funny how these things stick in your mind, isn't it?
Well, as soon as you mentioned the space book, it all sort of flashed back to me, and I remember keeling over with laughter to have something whacking you on the head. But you keep it on because it shows the funny side. It shows, and people like bloopers anyway. So you never take.
Failure is so important. You know, I think kids today are kind of this pressure to succeed, and what we need is pressure to fail. Because, you know, when I teach magic and so on, you get it wrong most of the time. And that's what's really interesting, you know, the happy accidents. I always keep that stuff on.
That's brilliant. Well, what can I say? Professor Richard Wiseman, I've known you now for over 20 years, believe it or not. I know. You stayed the same, and anyway. We first met.
I was going to say the opposite, actually. You're very youthful, and I was like 100 years old. I was born. I look 7 years old. So yes.
But I will remind you, I am older than you, so watch out.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
I was about to say we met in the year 2000. In fact, right here in Sydney at the third Skeptics World Convention. That's where I first met many people, James Randi and so on. But yes, there you were. But what an utter pleasure it is. Folks, I'm sure you'll join me in thanking our special keynote speaker, Professor Richard Wiseman. Please, after this convention, run to Google, run to wherever you can. Google his wonderful videos. They're hilarious and educational. And of course, his books are just fabulous and great for students, really great for students.
Very kind. And thank you for all the work you do for Skepticism as well. And I hope I think you've got the rest of the day ahead of you. So have a wonderful, wonderful conference. And I'm going to bed.
Of course, folks, this is one of the wonders of the modern world, that when we hook up like this for interviews or whatever it is, you never know what time zone. And we do really appreciate you staying up at this, dare I say, ungodly hour.
Indeed, yes, just coming up to 11 p.m. So I'm going to sneak upstairs and yes, but have a wonderful day and a wonderful conference.
Thank you once again. Thank you very much, Richard. And I might invite our MC to tiptoe in.